But isn't it interesting that it's called, I don't think they meant this when Barbara Walters invented it a long time ago, but it's The View.
Well,
that's the problem in America.
There
is one view,
right, and
one
that's clearly
true opinion, and everybody else can go sit in the corner.
That's correct. I think that's not actually, you're right, the name raises questions, and certainly there's been some much covered internal politics on that show, but I do think that, there is space. Even that show does have space. When Whoopi said what she said, there was quick pushback from other panelists. They were like, "Oh, I don't know. Actually, I think that might not be right." That's it.
Yeah, I got bad news for you. They don't have a monopoly on stupid. You wear Queers for Palestine t-shirts and masks 2 years after the pandemic ended. And you can't define woman, person who menstruates. You're the teachers' union education party, and you've turned schools and colleges.
There's a show on American television that has sparked more debate than almost any other, and it's called The View. The name itself, as Bill Maher once pointed out, says everything. Not a view. Not many views. Just the view. And that single word captures a much larger problem playing out across American media and politics today. Because when one side of the conversation dominates every panel, every discussion, and every headline, the other half of the country is simply told to sit in the corner and stay quiet. That's exactly the tension Bill Maher walked into when he faced off against Sunny Hostin and the panel of The View. And what followed was nothing short of explosive.
That in the first segment, you used the term woke, and you said that woke is what was sort of ruining everything. And I know that you're...
No, I didn't say ruining everything. I said that's why Trump could get reelected.
That's why Trump could get reelected. Yeah. So the term woke has been, in my view, co-opted by the right and weaponized and bastardized. And so I was surprised to hear you use the term, because historically, as you know, because I think you're quite brilliant, that woke is a word used by the Black community to note that we must be aware of social injustices.
But words migrate.
Why is that a bad thing?
It's not a bad thing, and originally that was absolutely a great thing. Alert to injustice. Who's not for that? But words do migrate. Now, I'll use any term you want, because maybe that is a word that's triggering, and so let's not use that.
The woke word. It started with a single word. Woke. Sunny Hostin came prepared, pressing Bill Maher on why he was using a term she believed had been hijacked and weaponized by the political right. In her view, woke was originally a powerful word born within the Black community, a call to stay alert to social injustice. She expected Maher to stumble. Instead, he stood his ground. He acknowledged the word's origins but argued that language evolves, sometimes in directions that drift far from the original meaning. What began as a meaningful rallying cry, he suggested, had been stretched into something that now alienates far more people than it unites. Hostin looked caught off guard. This wasn't the response she had prepared for.
But don't tell me the left had...
the super far right.
Well, he's talking about the left. Well, then
okay, but we talked about that. I think we agree about the danger of the super far right, and I can't say it enough. I think they're the bigger threat. But don't tell me that the left hasn't changed. Mm-hmm. I'm old enough to remember when it was the conservatives who hated the Jews.
Yeah.
Okay. That was a joke. But,
too dark.
Well, maybe it is, but it's true. If I had any doubt that I was right about the change that's happened in the left, watching people protest for a terrorist organization like Hamas, that straightened me up pretty quick.
Just when the tension seemed to ease, Bill Maher shifted gears. And this time, he aimed directly at the heart of the debate. He made it clear that while the far right presents its own serious dangers, the left is not immune to criticism either. In his view, the American left has changed dramatically over the past decade. It has grown more rigid, more insular, and increasingly disconnected from the everyday concerns of ordinary people. He pointed to something many on the left refuse to acknowledge, that watching protesters rally in support of a designated terrorist organization was a moment of genuine clarity for him. Sunny Hostin kept pushing, hoping Maher would redirect his criticism toward the right. He never did.
Someone must tell the usual suspects on the far left that the saying is, when you're in a hole, stop digging, not keep digging. Talk about doubling down on what got you in the first place. Even the one concession I've heard a few people on the losing side offer, that liberals should stop saying the Trump voters are stupid, comes with a kind of unspoken parentheses. We know they are stupid, just don't say it.
Then came the moment that stopped the room cold. Bill Maher looked directly at the panel and delivered a line that cut through every layer of political comfort. He told them plainly, "Stupidity does not belong to one side of the aisle." He pointed to the contradiction of wearing certain political slogans while being unable to answer basic questions. He called out the lingering mass culture long after the pandemic had faded. He questioned how the self-proclaimed education party had allowed schools and universities to lose the trust of millions of American families. These weren't gentle critiques. They were targeted, pointed, and they landed exactly where Maher intended them to.
For you. They don't have a monopoly on stupid. You wear Queers for Palestine t-shirts and masks 2 years after the pandemic ended. And you can't define woman, person who menstruates. You're the teachers' union education party, and you've turned schools and colleges into a...
One of the most striking moments in the exchange came when Bill Maher pushed back against the quiet but unmistakable condescension that has colored much of The View's coverage of Donald Trump supporters. The unspoken attitude that these voters are simply uninformed or foolish is something Maher refuses to accept. In his view, millions of Americans who voted for Trump weren't acting out of ignorance. They were reacting to policies and cultural messaging that felt completely disconnected from their lived reality. They go to grocery stores, they pay bills, they raise families, and when they feel dismissed by the very people who claim to represent them, they vote accordingly. That, Maher argued, is not stupidity. That is a response.
Over because I got so many texts this week because she attacked me the week
Yeah,
before.
sure.
So everybody was like, "Oh, Bill, I get you're enjoying the karma." First of all, I'm going to talk about this at the end of my show next week, teaser. But they're thing as karma, okay? Get over that. Lippy attacks me on a regular basis. She says stupid shit on a regular basis. They just happen to coincide. But can I just say this? I had on last week Ira Glasser, former longtime head of the ACLU, talking about free speech. Whoopi Goldberg, who, by the way, I hope is still a friend, we can disagree with each other, should not be canceled or put off her show, as much as I totally disagree with her crazy.
The debate then moved into territory that had clearly been building for some time. Bill Maher and Whoopi Goldberg have had their share of on-air clashes, particularly around masking during COVID-19. Goldberg had been vocal in pushing back against Maher's criticism of prolonged mask mandates, and the tension between them has never fully disappeared. But here is where Maher surprised many. Despite their disagreements, despite Goldberg's controversial Holocaust remarks that led to her suspension from The View, Maher publicly defended her right to remain on air. He argued that canceling her would go against the very principles of free speech he has long championed. The question he left hanging in the air was a powerful one. Would she have done the same for him?
Interesting that it's called, I don't think they meant this when Barbara Walters invented it a long time ago, but it's The View.
Well,
that's the problem in America.
But
There is one view,
right, and
one
that's clearly
true opinion, and everybody else can go sit in the corner.
That's correct. I think that's not actually, you're right, the name raises questions, and certainly there's been some much covered internal politics on that show, but I do think that, there is space. Even that show does have space. When Whoopi said what she said, there was quick pushback from other panelists. They were like, "Oh, I don't know. Actually, I think that might not be right." That's it.
Bill Maher then turned his attention to the show itself, its name, its format, and what it actually delivers. He observed that while The View presents itself as a place for multiple perspectives, the reality tells a different story. The panel may differ in style and tone, but the underlying message tends to circle back to the same core viewpoint again and again. The one notable exception in recent times has been Alyssa Farah-Griffin, who occasionally offers a different angle. But even her presence can feel more symbolic than genuinely impactful. What Maher was describing isn't just a television problem. It's a reflection of how media, when it stops challenging its own assumptions, quietly becomes the very echo chamber it claims to oppose.
21st century that prevented a woman from being president was the Electoral College. Democrats run for office as if the voters don't live here, as if they don't go to the grocery store and Starbucks and the office, but they do. They live here, and they actually see women and people of color, and it doesn't look like some patriarchal racist nightmare. Do problems remain pertaining to racism? Of course. But a poll last year asked, if America is the greatest country in the world, more blacks and Hispanic Americans agreed with that than the white progressives. It asked if racism is built into our society. White progressives agreed with that, at higher levels than Black and Hispanic people. It asked if government should increase border security. Same result. Hispanic Americans are less okay with illegal immigration than white.
Bill Maher then laid out something that many in progressive media are deeply reluctant to confront: the polling data. He pointed to surveys showing that on issues like border security, national pride, and the perception of systemic racism, white progressive voices often hold more extreme positions than the very communities they claim to speak for. Black and Hispanic Americans, when surveyed directly, frequently expressed views that aligned far more with common sense than with progressive orthodoxy. Yet the view panel, Maher suggested, continues to filter every issue through a lens of race and group identity, reducing complex human experiences to categories and treating disparities as automatic proof of systemic failure, without pausing to examine the full picture.
The votes are in. They don't want your pity. And Black people can't afford to indulge rich white people's need to endlessly flagellate themselves. They just want prices to go down and good jobs and the police when you call them. Black people, they're just like...
At the core of Bill Maher's argument is something refreshingly straightforward. Most Americans, regardless of race, background, or political affiliation, want the same basic things. They want prices to come down. They want safe neighborhoods. They want jobs that pay enough to build a life. They want schools that actually educate their children. They want to feel like the system is working for them, not against them. These are not radical demands. They are human ones. And when political parties and media platforms spend more energy performing their values than actually delivering results, people notice. They may not tweet about it, but they vote. And as Maher made clear, the Democratic Party ignores that reality at its own peril.
Kamala spent 100 days telling voters, I know it feels like crime and illegal immigration are bad, but feelings, look at this chart. Yes, there's a lot to not like already about the new regime, but maybe take 1 week to ask what you did wrong. The basis for Democratic campaigns has become, we're the smart people. That we know from the get-go. No need to look into that. We know that a priori, which is a Latin phrase the Red Hat people wouldn't have a clue about. But they don't need to. Have you seen my "In This House We Believe" lawn sign? See, it says right on it, we believe in science. Right, which is why you demanded no one even debate whether COVID could have escaped from the one lab in the one city where they were studying it. How far...
In the end, Bill Maher's clashes with Sunny Hostin in the panel of The View reveal something far bigger than a television disagreement. They expose a genuine fracture within the American left. A tension between those who believe cultural messaging and identity-conscious frameworks are the path forward, and those like Maher who argue that without broad, universally accessible solutions, the movement will keep losing the very people it claims to represent. Maher is not a conservative. He never pretends to be. But his willingness to hold a mirror up to his own side, calmly, consistently, and without apology, is precisely what makes him one of the most uncomfortable voices in American media today, because real progress doesn't come from an echo chamber. It comes from the courage to listen, even when the truth is inconvenient.